Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund consultation for Phase 3. My name is Jenny McDonald from Innovate UK's KTN, and I'm hosting today's event on behalf of the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, supported by my colleagues Nicoletta and Shelley. So if you need any help today, please do reach out to us and we'll do our best to help you. Before we get started with today's presentations, and more importantly, your comments to the consultation questions that we're going to cover today, just wanted to go through some housekeeping. So if you could move on to the next slide, Shelley. So I can't actually see that. Sorry, one moment. There we go. So you are on YouTube for today's event, and it's a great opportunity to be able to network virtually. We have over 960 people registered for today's event, so plenty of opportunity to introduce yourselves and maybe say a little bit about why you're interested in the IETF. The event itself is being recorded, and you'll be sent a link to the recording and also a link to the slides that you're going to see today after today's event, so that you can watch it back and share with colleagues who maybe haven't been able to make it today. You'll also be sent a link to the formal consultation page on the gov.uk website, so that after today's event, you'll be able to give a response to the consultation. Today's event obviously is part of that process. We're going to be presenting the proposed scope and eligibility to you, but this doesn't replace the consultation process, because you can give a lot more of a detailed response through the formal consultation page. As you're watching this webinar through YouTube, you are muted and won't be able to speak as part of the event, but please do use the chat box on YouTube to ask any clarification questions you might have once you've seen the presentations. My colleague Nicoletta is with you on YouTube, and she will pass your questions over to us during the Q&A section of the event. We're also going to be using some software called menti.com, to allow you to share your views and comments on the proposed Phase 3 programme and scope. So do have your phones ready. I'll go into more detail about how you actually get into that software when we come to that part of the event, but you don't need to download anything. You don't need to set up any new accounts to be able to use it. It's nice and straightforward. Just have those phones ready for us. Next slide. So the agenda is nice and straightforward. This is obviously the welcome. The first presentation that you're going to see is going to describe the proposed Phase 3 design. So looking at the scope, eligibility, technologies that might be in scope, all of that type of thing will be covered in that presentation. After that presentation, as I said, there'll be a very short clarification Q&A, and that's where you type your questions into the YouTube chat. That is purely for clarification about what you've just seen presented. So we won't be taking any questions about projects that you want to check whether they'll be in scope for Phase 3. This is a consultation, so we're really gathering feedback from you rather than defining the scope here and now. But if there's, just to make sure that everybody completely understands what's been presented, we thought it'd be good to have a very short Q&A straight after the presentation. Once that's completed, we'll then move over to Menti, and this is really where you provide your comments and feedback to what you've just seen. So we have a set of questions taken from the consultation that you'll be able to answer, and as I say, give us comments through the Menti software, which will then appear on the screen in front of us. So we'll be able to talk through some of the responses that we've had from you. Then we'll have our second presentation, which is looking at the wider policy landscape and maybe the long-term role for IETF. team would like to do and how the government can support you on industrial decarbonisation. Again, there'll be another very short Q&A where you can ask clarification questions about what has just been presented before we move back over to Menti for another couple of consultation questions where you can feedback and give your views on what has been presented. And then we'll wrap up with some sort of preparation for phase 3 before we close at 12 o'clock. So hopefully that is what you're expecting, and please do join us in Menti, because this is your opportunity, as well as the formal consultation, to share your views with DESNZ and with the IETF team in particular. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Situl Mate and Lily Tozer, who are going to take you through that first presentation and describe the proposed scope to you. Over to you, Situl.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this consultation event. So I'm just going to give a quick summary in terms of the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund. Some of you may be aware of it already, some of you may be new. So the fund itself, the IETF, is a competitive fund. We look to provide grant funding to support industry to transition to net zero. We did announce the IETF initially in 2018 budget, and the following year we did run a consultation, and based on that we were able to design the fund accordingly, and we published our results for that in June 2020. We've already had 2 phases of the IETF, phase 1, which opened in summer 2020, and then we had phase 2, which then included additional eligibility for deep decarbonisation, which opened in autumn 2021. We're currently still reviewing the applications from the final window, which we had in autumn 2022, which closed earlier this year. But in total, throughout the whole of the IETF, we've received at least almost 500 applications, and we're looking to support over 150 projects. We've had 6 windows so far, and we've seen the demand for the fund increase as the windows have gone on. We are looking to allocate at least funding for over 130 projects, and we've had a good wide range of actual applicants and interest in the fund from all over the UK, from England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and both from within clusters and dispersed sites and outside of clusters. And we really do encourage that, wherever you are in the UK, to really engage with us and get involved with this consultation, because we are keen on getting views from every sector, every region, and understanding, what barriers you're facing and what would help you. We have had good representation from lots of eligible sectors, and we are looking for companies of any size to get involved, micro up to large. So please do let us know what you're looking at. But we have been supporting projects in different regions and for different company sizes. So all of our previous winners are available on the gov.uk page, so you can take a look at them and see which kind of projects have been successful. Currently, we're going to be hopefully opening a phase 3 in early 2024. But before we do, that's why we're holding this consultation. And the key aim of this consultation is to understand the market views, understand industry's views, and see how we can maybe how we should incorporate that into phase 3. Our consultation is already open. It's already gone live. It opened last week on 26th of June, and it will close on the 21st of July. We are looking to publish our results of that in the autumn of the winter of this year, and then based on our consultation, we will be looking to actually open the fund beginning first quarter of 2024. How we would like you to respond and how the consultation actually works is there is an online survey which you can complete, and we highly recommend that you do complete the online survey rather than sending your answers through the email. We will still accept answers through the email, but it is better to actually provide every detail that you want on the actual online survey. There's plenty of room to actually give explanations for your answers in the actual survey, and you can actually add everything to that. So we highly recommend that you answer on there. We will obviously, if there are any issues or any questions that you have, please do get in contact with us via email, and we will be there to help to support you. And again, we do encourage everyone to participate. This is really an opportunity for you to let us know what works best and what issues you're having. I'm now going to pass over to Lily.
Great, thanks very much, Stal. So I'm going to take you through what we're actually aiming to get in terms of feedback in the consultation. We've got a two-part structure on this consultation. So in the first part, we're aiming to try and get a sense of your views on how we should develop phase 3 itself. So we have up to £185 million to allocate through that phase. We expect to do that in windows in 2024, as the final spend deadline for that budget is going to be in March 2028. So we're keen to get this up and running as quickly as we can. That means that many of the rules that I'll talk you through that we're proposing to take forward into phase 3 will be quite familiar. We know that these rules have been developed over time. We've already listened to and heard much of your feedback and fed that into the design of the current scheme. So we don't want to make big changes unless that they're informed by the feedback that we receive in this round. So I'll talk you through some of the questions that we've posed on this phase 3 aspect of the consultation. But we're also planning to look ahead. So beyond phase 3, what might happen and what might government need to do to carry on supporting you, your supply chains, innovators and researchers to really help us to install, develop those technologies that we'll need to get us to net zero. So the second part of the consultation is asking questions about that longer term role of government support. And we welcome views from all of you on both parts of the consultation. For those that might be less familiar with the fund, I'll just spend some time talking through what those current rules actually are and where we might be thinking about making some changes. So the very first thing to talk about is what we're actually trying to do with the fund. So the IETF objectives are quite simple. We're there to try and support industrial sites to reduce their energy consumption. So that's all of the energy that's used within the industrial processes themselves that we know are energy intensive and costly at the moment with rising and uncertain energy bills. We're also trying to help you to reduce the emissions from those same processes, so helping you move towards lower carbon fuels to potentially capturing and abating that carbon in the first place. And we have a number of different ways to try and support you to do that. The first is that we're trying to help you to build a pipeline of feasibility and engineering studies that could go on to be deployed at your sites. The second way that we're trying to deliver these objectives is providing capital support through grant funding to help bring down the upfront costs of investing in energy efficiency technologies. So we know that often the paybacks can be long on these sorts of technologies. It can be challenging to make the business case to your investment boards and so on. And so by providing that upfront grant funding, we're hoping that we're helping you to make the case for installing these technologies. And then finally, we're looking to help those first movers to install decarbonisation technologies on their sites. We know that some of you are already well underway with your net zero plans, but others need a little bit of help to get onto that journey. And many of these technologies come with risks, come with uncertainties and so on that can make it challenging again to make that business case. So by providing the upfront grant funding, we're hoping to help you to make those bigger investments. To go into a bit more detail on the scope of those different strands. So on the energy efficiency deployment strand, at the moment, we offer grants anywhere from £100,000 all the way up to £14 million against the costs of installing those technologies. Typically, you can receive anywhere between 30% and 50% of the costs of that technology through our grant funding. For deep decarbonisation technologies, we offer even more grants, recognising that often that these are more costly to install. They might come with bigger packages of work that are needed on your overall site, for example, to connect to the electricity grid or to make sure that you are able to move to fuels like hydrogen or carbon capture that may come with bigger infrastructure requirements within your site. And therefore we can offer a grant all the way up to £30 million. Again, we are offering that grant in a match funding basis. So that means that we can typically provide anywhere from 50 up to 80% of the costs of that technology through this funding. And then finally, I mentioned the study support that we offer. So within this strand, you can apply for help to do an investigation of an energy efficiency or a deep decarbonisation solution. If you're very early on in that journey, then you can do a feasibility study. So this helps you to understand whether that technology would be viable at your site. And we can help you to carry out one of those studies if it costs in the region of 30k, and the amount of grant that we can give you ranges all the way up to £7 million. So you can do some really substantial studies with this fund. If you're a little bit further along the journey, so you've worked out that there is a particular energy or deep decarbonisation solution that you think would work on your site, but you need to do some more work to look at the costs, the benefits, what permitting and so on you might need, the health and safety aspects of installing that technology, then you can do an engineering study with us. So normally the scope of that is basically a FEED study. So it's all of the work that you'd need to do before making a final investment decision. And again, the rules there are that the cost of that study must be at least £50,000 in order to be eligible, and we can provide a grant all the way up to £14 million against the costs of that study. In terms of the projects that we've supported so far, we have seen a huge range of different projects come forward, all the way from the lower end of these values to the upper end. And we are aiming to sort of support and be there for companies of any size, as Satal mentioned, and projects of any size, provided they are delivering against the objectives of our overall fund. In terms of the types of sites that can actually receive support from us at the moment, the IETF operates in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and we have a sister scheme that's been running in Scotland called the Scottish IETF. Many of the rules that I'll talk through today have been very similar for that scheme, but they will be considering what sort of funding they might want to take forward themselves. Any information that you do share with us through this consultation, we'll be making sure that we are sharing with our partners and colleagues across the devolved administrations, so that we can all collectively make sure that our funding offer and support for industry is well tailored to the needs of today. If you are registered in England, Wales and Northern Ireland and have a site in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, then you're able to apply to our fund as a lead applicant if your site is conducting any of the activities that are within this box. So generally these activities have all been chosen because they are energy intensive, because we know they're quite often hard to abate processes, and therefore we feel at the moment the best use of our money is trying to help these sites to decarbonise and to become more energy efficient. So that includes mining and quarrying activities, manufacturing activities, recovery and recycling of materials, so that's typically scrap processing and recycling sites, and then also data centres, recognising that that is an exceptionally energy intensive process and there are opportunities to make those processes more energy efficient. Moving on then in terms of the technologies themselves that are eligible, the IETF is technology neutral, is as one of the core principles of the fund. So we want to be there to support you to install or investigate whatever you think is the right technology solution for your site. Within that, we do have some further eligibility rules, and if you would like to take a look, our last guidance from the autumn 2022 window is still up online, so you can see what those further rules are, and we really welcome feedback within this consultation, and if you agree with those and if you think they're still appropriate. Again, a core principle for the fund is that whilst we want to be technology neutral, we do want to avoid technology lock-in. So we're trying to make sure that our rules adapt to the wider policy landscape and the direction of travel that industry is taking to decarbonise. So for energy efficiency technologies, if you're applying to the EE deployment strand or to the study strand with a technology that's aiming to deliver you on-site energy savings, that could include technologies such as process optimization. So you might be looking to reconfigure your manufacturing lines, for example, to make them more efficient. You might be looking to install new equipment, and the key here is that you have to be able to show that you're installing equipment that is much more efficient than what you would otherwise have been able to install without the IETF help. So we're not looking to support sites that are already planning to reinvest and update their equipment. We're helping you to make a transformation to your industrial processes and go above and beyond to deliver energy savings. We can also support technologies such as heat recovery, heat pumps, and then also certain resource efficiency measures are in scope where that can help you to deliver an on-site energy saving as well. For deep decarbonisation technologies, the key here is that that has to be delivering a reduction in your scope 1 or scope 2 emissions. So this is all about decarbonising the fuel that you're using or capturing the carbon that you're producing within your industrial processes. So the eligible technologies here could be, for example, installing new furnaces and kilns that use a lower carbon technology, so for example, hydrogen, or electrification as well would be in scope here. We can also help you to install carbon capture technologies, whether that be for carbon capture and storage or carbon capture and utilisation. And then the final thing to note on the technology eligibility is that this fund is really trying to fill a gap in the landscape whereby we know it can be quite challenging for technologies to be commercialised and demonstrated in the real world. So this isn't an R&D fund, but we are trying to help you to install technologies that otherwise might be perceived as riskier or more novel. So for deep decarbonisation technologies, you can apply to us if your technology solution is reached at least TRL 7. So that means it's typically reached around a sort of prototype stage, but may not yet have been demonstrated in industry fully. But that could go all the way up to TRL 9, so it could also be a well-established technology as well. And then for energy efficiency technologies, you must demonstrate that the technology that you're planning to install is technology readiness level 8 or above. So again, that tends to mean that it's already been installed or tested in some kind of operational environment previously. One of the main aims of the fund is to support replication and scaling of the technologies that we're aiming to support, so through knowledge dissemination events and so on. And we do encourage all of our applicants to do as much as they can to share what they've learned from their funding. But again, this is not an R&D fund, and we do hope to support sort of the follow-on of technologies that might have been supported through earlier UKRI funds or indeed through the Net Zero Innovation portfolio that the DESNZ department offers. And I'll end there in terms of the overall sort of eligibility proposals that we've put in place, but I think we'll move on to talk about the Mentimeter now.
Thanks very much to Sital and to Lily as well for that great presentation. Before we jump on to Menti, we're going to just do a very short Q&A, and I know you've been putting your questions into YouTube chat box, so thank you very much for that. This is just to give a little bit of clarification to what you've just seen presented to you. So we won't be talking about specific projects. A lot of the questions actually that have come in are about whether particular technologies are in scope at the moment. And I think that will help if we can clarify that for people to then be able to feed into Menti. So the first one, Lily, is actually about the stage of commercialisation. So they were wondering if the competition is open to companies that have yet to reach commercialisation. Is it just for established industrial sites?
Yeah, it's a great question. So essentially what we're aiming to do is support the decarbonisation or the reduction in energy use of existing industrial sites. So that means the applicants to the IETF must already be carrying out a process whereby they plan to install a technology that will help them to decarbonise or reduce their emissions. If, as it sounds, that you may be a technology developer and what you've done is develop a technology up to commercialization stage, then what you might be able to do is partner with one of those eligible lead applicant sites to install that technology. And you'd be very welcome to do that. And I think at the end of this presentation, Jenny will come on to talk about some of the routes there are for you to find those sites and to match make and make good projects together.
I will, I definitely will. And the next question was around solar generation. So is solar actually having a solar panels put onto a site, is that eligible for the IETF?
So this is something we'd really welcome feedback on in our consultation. We have an open question about what sorts of technologies we should be supporting in future. At the moment, the rule is that energy generation of any kind isn't in scope. So renewable technologies such as solar aren't in scope for support. The main rationale behind that is because what we're trying to do is help you to switch your existing equipment over so that it can be electrified rather than help you to install energy generation equipment itself. And that's often because that energy generation equipment maybe has a slightly more favourable payback than the cost of updating your kit on your site.
Lovely. And the next one is asking for a little bit more of a definition of what is meant by deep decarbonisation. So does it include things like direct air capture, carbon storage, and green hydrogen and their derivatives, its derivatives?
Yeah, great question. So again, you can look back at some of our previous guidance to find more of the specific rules on this. But generally, the guiding principle is that what you must be able to show after installing your technology is that what you've done is reduce the emissions within the industrial site itself. So direct air capture technologies are not in scope because they're not fundamentally reducing the emissions that are being produced by the industrial processes. Of course, they're beneficial overall, but that's not the aim of this fund. Hydrogen technologies would be in scope. Again, the kind of guiding principle at the moment is those switches over to hydrogen should enable you to demonstrate that the hydrogen fuel you're using at the end of that switch isn't more carbon intensive than the fuel you were using before. And we'd be looking at potentially moving our rules so that we are adopting the low carbon hydrogen standard as well. So that would be the aim for what your hydrogen should look like. The supply of that hydrogen isn't in scope for support from this fund.
Thank you very much. The next question was about potentially a missing SIC code. So for the person that posted that question, I'll let you do that in Menti because that's more about what you would like to see added to the phase 3 scope rather than clarification question. The next question was around how Scottish sites get involved. It says, given you are seeking applications from across the UK, how likely would an application for a project in Scotland be progressed?
Yeah, great question. So at the moment, the IETF is only open to sites that are in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and also registered in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So Scottish sites wouldn't be eligible for the fund, and that's because they can apply to the Scottish IETF. As I said, we'll be working with the Scottish Government to understand what sort of funding offer will be opening in 2024, but we do expect all parts of the UK to be able to apply to one or both of the funds.
Lovely, thank you. Next question is, are battery-based energy storage solutions currently eligible?
Yeah, great question. So again, this is something we'd really welcome feedback on. At the moment, the test would be whether installation of that battery solution would be helping you to unlock emission saving on your site, or would be part of an energy efficiency solution on your site. So for example, if it's helping you to sort of better manage and balance your energy demand, and as a result you'll become more efficient, then that would be a great example of an energy efficiency project that would be in scope.
Lovely, thank you. The next couple of questions are around the TRL level. So the first person is asking, why is TRL, the criteria TRL 7 and above, being planned again? And then the second question is sort of similar. Should technologies that are below TRL 7 be submitted as a feasibility study? So I guess why do we have that minimum TRL 7?
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons for this. I think the first one is that ultimately what we're trying to do with this fund is really to unlock and start to deliver energy and emission savings right away. So we have to start delivering against Carbon Budgets 5 and Carbon Budget 6. So there are tight deadlines where we need to be delivering these emissions and energy savings in industry, and therefore deploying technologies that are already commercially available at scale is perhaps the quickest way to do that. At the same time, we absolutely recognise that we need to be pulling through those technologies that require a bit more research and innovation. And there are funds that are available that do that and are better tailored to doing that, both through UKRI, but also through the support offered through the Net Zero Innovation Portfolio programme within DESNZ. So that provides support for earlier stage fuel switching solutions, carbon capture and so on. And our aim is really to work with those funds and help pull through those technologies so that they can eventually be deployed and demonstrated with our fund.
Lovely, thank you. And I think probably there's a question about the reporting system being streamlined. For that person, please do pop those comments into Mentimeter feedback. The last question now, I think, classification Q&A would be, is there a different funding level in terms of percentage grant for the feasibility studies versus the capital investment, I presume the deployment they mean?
Yes, there is. And I will absolutely confess that off the top of my head, I've not got the best memory of it. But yeah, generally with the feasibility and engineering studies, the different amounts of funding that you can get against the total grant differ both by the size of your company and often by your location, and whether you're also committed to sharing the knowledge from that feasibility or feed study, in which case you can get a more generous offer of grant funding. On the deployment and strands for energy efficiency and deep decarbonisation, as I mentioned, the slightly more generous offer for decarbonisation technologies, because we recognise that they often don't pay back and might incur longer term higher operational costs. All of the details on the generosity and levels of grant that we offer are included within the consultation and also within our past guidance as well.
That's great. Thanks ever so much, Lily. That was great to get through those questions. I know there were more questions in the chat box, but we will come back to it. We'll have another opportunity, another Q&A later on this morning. So thank you very much, Lily. Apologies for not having my camera on. I'm suffering from a bit of a struggling broadband this morning, so I'm not going to risk putting my camera on again. But we are now at the point where I'd like you all to come across with me to Menti. So this is the interactive part of today's event and your chance to give feedback and comments on the consultation questions. So if you could move with us to Menti, so if you type in www.menti.com and then put in the code of 66031110. That should get you into what you can see on the screen now. You shouldn't be asked to download any software, and you won't have to create an account or anything like that. It should take you straight through to a page where it asks you for the code. So again, it's www.menti.com. And then the code is 66031110. If you type that in and start answering the questions that you see pop up, and we'll then talk through some of those questions, well, all of the questions on the screen as your responses come in. But please do give as much comments as you'd like. Your comments will be on the screen, but unless you put your name in the comments, it won't be attributed to you. So it will be anonymous scrolling on the screen. Okay, so Shelley, if you'd like to move on to the preliminary questions. Yeah, and again, one more. So the first couple of questions really are just to get a sense of who's with us at the event today. So the first question is looking at the size of your organisation. Micro being going through the usual SME definition, micro being less than 10 employees, small being less than 50 employees, medium-sized company being less than 250 employees, and everybody above 250 classed as large. So we can see we have a lot of large companies here with us today. Numbers are still going up, so over 200 people joining us on Menti at the moment, but a good coverage from SMEs as well. So those three added together are not far off 100 as well. That's lovely. So please do keep joining us in Menti and voting, because this information will be shared with DESNZ, with the IETF team after today's event. So if we move now to the next slide, Shelley. And this one really is asking you what category best describes your organisation. So in terms of the IETF programme, where do you fit in that programme? So the industrial site, these are companies, you guys, organisations that are eligible to lead an IETF project. So the manufacturing sectors, mining, quarrying, data centres, people like that. In fact, we have a separate column there I can see for data centres. So good to see some data centres with us today, but also a nice percentage of industrial sites joining us as well, which is really good. The next category is technology provider. So these are the companies and academics as well who are actually providing the technologies to the industrial sites to deploy on their sites. So if you have technology that's eligible for the IETF, you should be clicking on technology provider. Public sector, so these, as well as central government, these are local authorities, devolved administrations, you would be ticking this box. Finance, oh, disappointing. Where finance? So that's coming along to the event today to provide private investment to help you with these projects, but maybe we'll get those next year when the competition opens. And then the final column there, really, research and development. So this is research and technology organisations, universities, and maybe energy consultants helping industrial sites to deploy their technologies. 52 of other. We'll have to go and see what that is after the event, but you're all welcome to the event today. So thank you very much for that. And now hopefully that has allowed you some time to be typing in your comments to the consultation questions which come next. And that's really the bit we were hoping you would provide feedback for. So Shelley, if you'd like to move us on to the first consultation question. And I'd like to ask Lily if you could just talk us through the first question, what was meant by the first question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure for many of you, this looks like quite a basic question. And indeed, in our past consultations, it's something that we've asked and we've had really good and helpful feedback on. The reason that we're asking this question again about what the main barriers to investing in energy efficiency and deep decarbonisation technologies are is because we realise that a lot's changed over the last few years. There's different types of support out there from government. We know that industrial sites, industrial companies are starting to take the net zero agenda very seriously, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those barriers around finance, investment, access to finance and investment, the returns and so on that you might get on these technologies, and the general uncertainty that exists around the feasibility of those technologies aren't still significant barriers to you. There'll be an opportunity within the consultation document itself to provide a little bit more nuance around these answers, but the sort of overall views that we're getting back today will be incredibly helpful to give us sort of an initial overview of what we're actually getting. So thank you very much for all of the answers you're already providing to us.
That's lovely, thanks. And I can see from the first few that are on the screen there's a lot of people talking about the cost of it, the lack of financial support, the capital cost, the equipment being a major barrier. Again and again, actually, capital being the issue. Shelley, are you able to scroll down on the right-hand side? There's a scroll bar to be able to move down to some other comments. That's it, lovely, great. So see some more. Oh, that's a good one as well. New technology is perceived as being too high risk. So the IETF, obviously, we talked about in the Q&A just a moment ago how the TRL levels are quite high. That maybe will help with that issue, that if you're deploying a TRL 7, TRL 8 technology, they've been proven to some extent at scale. So hopefully that will help with that issue. Risk of retrofit technology is difficult to attract investment. Again, another investment one. So hopefully that shows how popular the IETF is, I guess, to help de-risk that a little bit and provide some of that capital investment. Scrolling down a little bit more, Shelley. The hydrogen one as well. Yes, that's that I can imagine that is a barrier. That being able to decarbonize and deploy some of the different hydrogen technologies is great, but you have to know you've got that supply coming in the next 5 years to make the investment worthwhile. So yep, that's a great one. In Northern Ireland as well, issues over policy and availability of skills. I think skills across the board is a problem that the government's aware of and is trying to tackle at the moment. A little bit further, Shelley. The cost of time, knowledge, what's out there. So understanding what's out there, hopefully we can help with that a little bit. I'll be talking towards the end of the event, not only about some of the existing resources, but also some of the dissemination that we'll be doing, some different resources that will be created this year to help you with that, to make you more aware of different eligible technologies that you can potentially deploy next year with support from the IETF. So that's great. So if we can move on to the next question, Shelley. So Lily, would you like to again take us through this one?
Yeah, thanks very much. So this is the 14th question in our consultation. Again, it's more high level. It's sort of simple yes, no, and not sure. But in the consultation, you'll have an opportunity to expand on your answer and really explain, for example, where you would normally look to try and find out what support might be available to you, whether that offer of helping to get grant funding is currently clear, whether you understand the routes that you have available, and indeed to get your thoughts on how we might be able to improve the accessibility of that information. There are, as a heads up, there are around 26 consultation questions overall. If you are providing us a full response to the consultation, you don't necessarily have to fill out every one of those, but the ones that are relevant to you, we'd really welcome your feedback. And really useful to see that there is quite a big range in the answers here already.
Yeah, I agree. We're at least halfway there with the yeses. So we just need to help the other no's to know where everything is for you. Hopefully, again, some of the dissemination work that we've got planned towards the end of the year will help you at least with the IETF. And if we can broaden that out to the wider support that Rachel will be talking about in a moment, we will definitely do that to help you. The KTN as well, that's really our reason for existence, is trying to signpost opportunities to innovators and companies wanting to get to net zero. So do come and engage with KTN outside of the IETF as well, if you need help with that. Lovely. Okay, on to the next slide. And again, over to you.
Great, thanks. So again, hopefully self-explanatory. We use SIT codes in the IETF, and what we're aiming to do with the use of SIT codes is not try and make things harder, it's really to try and make things easier. So standard industrial classification codes are published online. The codes themselves relate to different categories of activity, and they go into quite a lot of detail of different subsectors of activity that you might be carrying out as an economic organisation. Some companies will have SIT codes registered on their company's house account that really clearly match to what they're doing, in which case when you apply to us, all you need to do is let us know what that standard industrial classification code is, and then we can easily see whether or not you're in scope and eligible to receive support. In some cases, we do recognise that actually what you might have up on your company's house account, or perhaps your parent company's house account, won't necessarily match to the activity that you're carrying out at your industrial site. So, for example, a really common one is maybe that you are a food and drink manufacturer, but perhaps your parent company is registered as a wholesaler, in which case their SIC code won't be eligible for the IETF, but the activity you're actually doing, of course, is. In which case, that's not a problem at all. What we just ask you to do is explain to us which SIC code most well matches to what you're actually doing, and then we work with you to make sure that you are eligible. So the SIC codes are just used as a bit of shorthand, really, to explain who we're trying to target. We don't have this fund completely open to all businesses of every kind, or indeed to all organisations, whether that be in the public sector or academia or so on. The reason for that is because this fund is specifically targeted at trying to help industrial sites. And again, that's because we know abatement within industrial processes can be particularly challenging. That said, we are very open within this consultation to considering an expansion to other sectors. We'd also be interested in thoughts on whether you think we should actually target our funding even more. So looking at maybe some of those sectors that are particularly hard to abate within our existing codes, and perhaps focusing the fund on those. But again, great to see that there is a range here of thoughts, and particularly suggestions that we should maybe be looking to change the range of eligible sectors.
I think, yeah, the fact that we've got over, well, 2/3 more for the yeses than the nos is we're clearly doing something right with the current SIC codes. But for the person that put a question through in the clarification Q&A about SIC codes, I hope you are one of those no's, and that you are now commenting on the next question, which gives you a chance to say what you would include that isn't currently included in the range of SIC codes, and give us a little explanation. I'm hoping that's what those 33 people have done. For the not sures, if you're not sure because you have never heard of SIC codes before, or you don't know which SIC codes are eligible for the IETF, then do go and check out the competition guidance from the final round, the autumn 2022 that Lily mentioned earlier, because that lists all of the SIC codes that are currently eligible, and then you'll be able to see if you are one of those SIC codes, and if not, feedback into the formal consultation process. So now if we go on to the next question, this was really to give you a chance to say which SIC codes you think should be in there or shouldn't be in there that currently aren't part of it, and more importantly, why. So that's what we really need from you. If you think there's a particular sector that should have been in it from the start, it's energy intensive, it needs this support, great, state what that sector is. But really, if you could give us an explanation of why you think it's so important it's in there, particularly, you know, to help sort of justify including them into the phase 3, that is the type of detail that we're hoping to get from you. So looking at this, we have heat pumps, CO2 capture. So heat pumps and carbon capture at the industrial site at the moment. Do you mean, I'm assuming you mean manufacturing heat pumps maybe, because you can deploy heat pumps at sites that are eligible for the IETF. That has been used to upgrade heat that's been recovered, captured, and CO2 capture is in scope already under the current guidance. But maybe you're talking about actually manufacturing these technologies, I'm not sure. So again, do go to the formal consultation on the gov.uk page to give a bit more detail on that. Other sectors like, office buildings, so maybe the retail sector, public sector buildings like hospitals and schools, that is something that hasn't been covered yet, so that's great. Be good to know, you said because they're using large boilers, be good to again get a bit more detail from you. If you could feed into the formal consultation, just expand on that a little bit more. Moving down a little bit, Shelley, if we can scroll down a little bit. Power generation, yes, and that is one that we've been has been suggested to us in the past as well. Yeah, Okay. No support for retrofitting existing technologies that could help to decarbonise power generation. I'm assuming this is fossil fuel power generation, but again, if you can expand on that when you do respond to the consultation, that would be great. Scrolling down a little bit further. So R&D. So yes, Lily has said that currently the IETF is a capital investment fund. So it's helping you to deploy technologies that are very close to commercialized rather than R&D. So that's, yeah, not really a part of a SIC code, but good to know. Scrolling down a little bit further, Shelley, I see this next one was probably something that was mentioned. Yeah, so the activities that don't directly impact the industrial process. So solar generation, I'm assuming, on the industrial site for export, heat pumps for offices, so maybe not for solar electricity on the industrial site. So other sectors, I'm assuming that means you're talking about renewable generation and low carbon heating for other sectors other than industrial sites. And solar generation, again, yeah, includes a lot more risk averse SMEs be willing to apply if they had solar generation included too. Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for your comments. That is the end of the first session of Menti. We will be coming back to this link. So I know there's another couple of questions which you may have already answered, which is great if you have. But we're now going to pop back to the presentations and have the next presentation from DESNZ, who are going to be talking now about the wider government support for industrial decarbonisation and what the long-term view might be for the IETF. So I'd like to hand over to Rachel Arbour from DESNZ to talk us through that. Over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Jenny. Yes, hello everyone. Just to echo what Lily and Tital said before, thank you very much for partaking in today's event. So I appreciate we've been on the call for nearly an hour now, so I'll try and be as succinct as possible. As you will see on the slide, there is a ambition to reduce industrial emissions or emissions in general by 78% by 2035 and reduce final energy demand by 15%. Those are obviously very ambitious targets, but we are very keen to try and reach them. In order to reach those, we are going to need to try and reduce that 16% of UK emissions that you see on the screen that industry are responsible for. And this is why deploying cleaner technologies across industry is so important, not only just because it also helps to future-proof UK industry as well. You'll see that there are two documents pictured just on the right-hand side. Those are the Powering Up Britain documents and the Industrial Decarbonisation Strategy. These are two really informative pieces of work that the government has published online, and they're essentially strategies that government are pursuing to enable the deployment of cleaner technologies across industries. So we would recommend that you run your eyes across those two documents if you are considering making an application to the IETF. They give you a really good picture of sort of the broader industrial decarbonisation policy landscape. Hopefully my slides are moving across, but it does say struggling to connect. Let's see. There we go. Excellent. So in terms of government support that is currently out there, the industrial policy landscape has changed quite a vast amount since we launched in 2020. Just in terms of the world, we have had a global pandemic, and we're now seeing sort of soaring energy prices. But just in terms of the UK on its own, we have seen the introduction of the industrial decarbonisation and the British energy security strategies. And we've also seen developments to the CCUS and hydrogen business models as well. There are new funds that are being launched to provide further support for industry. We do realise that industrial decarbonisation is a huge area to tackle, and it's something that's going to need a lot of different avenues of support. So one of those new funds that have been launched is the Local Industrial Decarbonisation Plan. You can find more information about that online. And the government has also made wider commitments to developing the industrial policy landscape, and those sort of 4 things that are listed there, consultations and calls for evidence, they are sort of currently scheduled to be going out in 2023 and 2024. So, evolution of the IETF and future government support. As mentioned by Lily a few slides ago, there are 2 parts of the consultation. The second part of the consultation is going to be asking broader questions with the intention of gathering feedback that will help with the development of potential future policy areas, including sort of like the long-term future plan of the IETF. So the themes of these questions that you'll see in this consultation when you come to complete it on Citizen Space are the long-term role of the IETF, financing, government support avenues, and the wider benefits to supporting EE and DD technologies. So I think we're going to be moving back on to Mentimeter now to cover 2 more questions from the second section, which I'll be happy to speak through, but I'm not sure, Jenny, if you wanted to.
I am back. Sorry about that. Another little blip with my broadband. Thank you very much for hanging in there. So thank you. Before we move over to Menti again, we're going to have a short Q&A to answer any clarification questions that you might have about either Lily's presentation, Sitol's presentation first thing, or what you've just seen presented by Rachel. So I'm going to go back to the Q&A box and see what's come in. So this is probably one for Lily. The first few might be for Lily because they were left over from the previous Q&A. Are heat pumps to heat a facility in scope currently, Lily?
Yeah, so at the moment, a heat pump can be supported by the IETF, so you can claim grant funding towards the costs of installing that or making any of the adaptations on your site to install it. The key thing is that that heat pump must be providing you with power or heat towards an industrial process, so that can't be installed to help to heat up the space, for example, where your workers might be working or sat. It must be used to heat an industrial process itself.
Lovely, thank you. There's a question around biofuels, so that they know that it's been excluded. They, I'm hoping, have commented on Menti as well, but what's the rationale for the currently biofuels not being included?
Yeah, it's a great question. In terms of looking ahead, we do expect there to be the publication of the biomass strategy around the time that we will be launching and opening up IETF phase 3. So we'll of course be making sure that all of our rules align with the strategy set out within that document. One thing that we do tend to adopt as an overarching principle for the IETF is that idea of not locking in technologies that may not be vital and necessary to delivering net zero. And that means that we do support biofuels, but only in limited circumstances. So for biomass, basically you can apply to us with a fuel switch to biomass if you're switching away from a more carbon intensive fuel. But the key rules around that are that you must be using that biomass in a high heat temperature application. And that's because we know that lower heat can be, for example, electrified, and that would potentially be a preferred route. What we do ask you to do in the application is to set out why that technology is the right technology for you, what other routes you've considered, and why biomass would work best in your application. And then also to, of course, set out how you'll be making sure that you're securing a sustainable source of that biomass. So that could be biomass that you are generating yourself, it could be waste products, or it could be being brought in. But either way, it must meet sustainability criteria. And then just on biogases as well, the government has the green gas support scheme, so that provides incentives to help you to inject any green gas that you might be producing on your site into the grid. We do, of course, also encourage you to use your own green gas or to use green gas from local suppliers if that might be the only lower carbon fuel that's available to you. So the IETF rules currently limit the use of biogas to just those sites that aren't near to the existing gas grid. But if you can prove that that's the case, then you would absolutely be supported to switch across to biogas. And again, if you've got any concerns about those rules, or you think that actually we might be missing some vital evidence that would show some other wider uses of those fuels, then please do let us know in the consultation.
Thank you. The next one is about who can lead a project. So they're asking, would you allow an accredited intermediary, such as a trade association or landlord or local authority, to lead a project on behalf of an industrial site?
Rach, do you perhaps want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that one. So currently, we expect the lead applicant to be the sort of the industrial site that are actually undertaking the activity. Naturally, we would be interested in hearing more views on this if you were happy to sort of put this into the consultation, into your consultation response. Obviously, we do also allow project partners to come in and contribute as well. So just because you aren't going to be the lead applicant or the industrial site undertaking the activity, that doesn't mean that you can't be involved in the application process overall. But at the moment, the lead applicant has to be the site that's undertaking the change or the study.
Thank you. This might be for you too, Rachel, but Lily or Rachel, is there any way to get a better idea of when the competition window might open in Q1? Is it more January or more towards March?
I think we're going to reserve the right to just say early 2024 still for now, just because we don't want to sort of create any expectations of a particular month and then it not come out. But yeah, so early 2024 is what the official statement is.
Quite a way away yet, so that's fair enough. I'm going to skip the hydrogen one. The hydrogen one production, please pop that into Menti. Oh yes, there will be ground source heat pumps for, I think that's been covered already by the other heat pump question. So yes, heat pumps are eligible at the moment. So a question for Rachel. Can you provide more info on where to find the consultation for the non-road mobile machinery? Would you be able to share a link in the chat? Or
so it's not out yet. So all of those sort of consultations and call for evidences that were listed on the previous slide, they're due to come out in either 2023 or 2024. So if you did just give it a quick Google and didn't find anything, that's why. So there'll be sort of future announcements around these sort of various engagements that we'll have with industry in due course. So yeah, essentially watch this space. It's not out yet.
Great stuff, and we will promote it as soon as we can. We will promote it through all the usual KTN and IETF channels. The next one is another energy generation question. So are wind turbines included in the scope? Are they an eligible cost?
Yeah, so again, because that would be electricity generation, that wouldn't be in scope at the moment. We absolutely would support you if you were electrifying any of your equipment on site, then we could help to cover some of the costs of those adaptations. Where we would stop short is the installation of the wind turbine itself.
And then the final question, I'm going to paraphrase, can we repurpose an existing site for a new process and apply into the IETF? So use the IETF funding to change from an existing process into a new process?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we've received lots of feedback on this before. So we recognise that with industrial sites and sites of the kind that we're aiming to support, there are naturally evolutions in the processes that you might be looking to carry out in the future, either short term or long term. So we have got a consultation question on this specifically, so please do provide any feedback that you can within the consultation on this point. At the moment, our core aim is to really try and reduce the emissions and the energy use that is already being delivered through industrial processes. So we're not necessarily looking to extend out our support to new processes or the setup of new sites. But again, we would really welcome feedback on that, and particularly on how we might be able to measure and analyse the benefits of supporting the switches to those new processes.
That's great, thank you. I did just see a new one pop up. Oh, is an agricultural system that is capturing carbon and reusing the carbon eligible?
Yeah, so at the moment, agricultural sites are essentially out of scope. So we support food processing, so it's typically the manufacture of food products or drink products, but we don't support agriculture at the moment within the fund. Again, really welcome feedback on whether there is sort of a broad justification for opening up the fund to support agriculture overall, or whether there might be specific types of agricultural processes that you think should be in scope. One of the reasons that we don't currently support agriculture is obviously we're aware that there's sort of a very sort of established and complex set of existing subsidies already to try and help agricultural sites to become more environmentally friendly and adopt different types of decarbonisation measures and so on. That's not to say there isn't a role for the IETF, but we would welcome further evidence on what that should be.
Lovely, thank you. And we also have questions about heating. So replacing boilers that are used in factories to providing heating. Doesn't say if it's heating for the industrial process or generally heating the building. And also switching from boilers having biogas boilers, so a fuel switch to biogas for their boiler, if I wrap those two together.
Yeah, perfect. So on the biogas front, as I said, the general rule there is we can support a switch over to biogas if it's away from a more carbon intensive fuel, such as gas from the gas grid. But we would only allow you to do that if you don't actually have access to a grid supply or a lower carbon alternative. With the question on boilers overall, so again, the rule there is really if that boiler is being used to produce heat for or steam for a process that is an industrial process, then it's in scope. If it's being used to produce heat to warm up a building, and that isn't a direct necessity for the industrial process itself, so perhaps it's just there to make sure that your workers and so on are heated and warm, then that wouldn't be in scope for us. And again, the rationale for that is that we recognise that often it can be more difficult and more costly to replace equipment that is embedded within the industrial process than it may be to replace and retrofit equipment that is used within buildings. There's also other types of schemes available to support updates to building processes and minimum standards and so on that we are aware at the moment the IETF isn't particularly well set up to sort of check and serve, and that's why we've got this industrial focus.
Lovely, thank you. Would the capturing waste heat to be used on or off site be eligible?
Yeah, so this is something again that we would really welcome feedback on in the consultation. I believe one of the questions that's coming up would be a good chance to provide some feedback and views on this. The general rule here is again that all of the support that we are giving out is aiming to reduce the net energy demand or the net emissions produced by your site. So that means if you are recovering heat or waste energy, then we expect you to be using that heat or energy back within your own industrial processes so that we can demonstrate that there has been that overall saving. Of course, if the right thing for you to do is to export some of that heat or energy, then we do encourage you to be doing that, but we don't provide support towards the costs of achieving that project, because hopefully there will be some kind of payback within that for you.
Lovely. And now really interesting question about mines. So obviously mining and quarrying is in scope as an industrial process, but could you use the IETF to repurpose mine shafts for energy storage?
Yeah, very interesting question. So again, at the moment, that wouldn't be in scope. The main reason being that we wouldn't be able to show that there was a reduction in the emissions or the energy use of that existing mining process itself, because of course what you're doing is you're eliminating that mining process and creating something new. Again, it sounds like a very good project to pursue. The IETF might not be quite the right home for it, but if you could provide us with some evidence within the consultation on what sorts of projects might be out there and what kind of funding they might need, that would be really helpful to us.
Yeah, I think the next one I think has been covered already with the waste heat recovery. So using waste heat from an industrial process, but giving it to swimming pools or for non-industrial use. So I think we've covered that already. You mentioned lots of funds initiatives. Any plans, ideas to integrate applications? That's probably one for Menti again. So if you have an idea about how we could join things together from the different pots of money that you've seen across DESNZ's portfolio, then please do pop that into the Menti, because any great ideas like that we'd like to hear about. There was also quite a few questions that are not related to the presentations you've just seen, asking about, will we be sharing the slides? Yes, we'll share the presentation slides and you'll get a link to the recording as well. What you won't get are the Mentimeter responses, because that information is being gathered for the IETF team to help them with the consultation. What you will get from the IETF team in the autumn, though, is the government's response to all of the information that's been gathered during the consultation. So you won't see Mentimeter comments in the after show information that gets sent to you, but you will get a copy of the slides. So I hope that's okay. There was also a question, which I'm going to put Lily on the spot, but somebody asking about the autumn 2022 assessments, and would people be notified soon?
Yes, and I really thank people for their patience. I think people that did apply to that funding round will be aware that we extended the deadlines out by around 6 weeks. That was to allow us to get more applications in, and because people were telling us they were having trouble submitting some of their applications over the Christmas period. That has meant that overall our timelines have been pushed back a little bit. So where we were expecting to notify people around June time, it's now going to be around July. We're working as hard as we can to get through the final clearance processes within government so that we can let you know as soon as possible. And thank you for bearing with us.
Thanks very much, Lily. That's great. Okay, folks, so we're now going to move back over to Mentimeter. So again, it's the same website, www.menti.com, and the same code again. Hopefully you're still in there, but if you did happen to come out, the code again is 66031110. And we're going to just cover the last two questions that we have for you today. So Lily, would you like to again talk us through this first of the two questions?
Yeah, and in fact, I might actually pass across to Rach to talk us through these, if that's okay, Rach.
Sure, no problem. I'm not sure if my slide has caught up.
Okay, in that case, I'll pick up, but we are on to the Mentimeter now. So the question that you've got in front of you is, do you agree with the decision to limit IETF support to existing industrial sites and processes? So this comes on to some of the things that I've been discussing in the presentation so far, and indeed quite a lot of the questions around whether we should be additionally supporting the setup of new processes or helping sites to move on to adopt new processes. This has come up a lot in terms of feedback. It can be quite challenging for different sites to understand whether or not they're eligible, because they will be going through some of these evolutions in their processes. So we want to make sure that we're getting our rules right. That said, we also want to make sure that what we're doing ultimately is leading to an overall net reduction in emissions and energy. And ideally, we want to be able to demonstrate that that energy and emission reduction is occurring on the industrial site itself, so within their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. And that's because we know that the industrial processes themselves are very hard and challenging to abate, and that's where we're focusing our support. That's not to say that work outside of the boundary of a site or to set up new processes wouldn't be a good thing, but it's just whether the IETF is the right mechanism to support that. So in the consultation document, again, you'll be able to provide a little bit more information than just the yes, no and not sure. But again, it's good to see that there's sort of quite a lot of support for the current rules, and we would be very keen to dig into the responses from those people that have suggested that we might want to make a change to this rule.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great response. Double the amount of people saying yes to limiting the IETF support to existing industrial sites and processes. I guess we have plenty of work to keep us busy just with the existing industrial sites, but maybe further down the line it's something for newer sites, newer industrial processes. But as Lily said, please do share your comments in the formal consultation on gov.uk to expand on why you've said no to that, and if we're missing a trick, that's what we need from you, some detail on exactly why you've said no. So thanks very much for that. And then the final question today, if we move on, Shelley, is over to you, Lily.
Thank you. So yes, you'll see this is quite a broad question. So we have some specific questions within the consultation around whether we should be looking to change the scope of studies. We're aware that studies are inherently quite complicated. So this is all about the kind of investigations that you need to do to help you to understand how best to make an investment decision in a particular technology solution. So we've got some quite detailed discussion around that in the consultation itself. For deployment strand, it's not necessarily simpler, but I suppose what we're trying to do is a little bit more straightforward, in that really what we're trying to help you to do is buy new equipment, invest in upgrades to your site that will help you to deliver an energy or an emission saving. But we want to make sure that our scope for that competition is correctly specified, and we'd be really interested in whether there's anything that we could do to generally help to lead to better outcomes for your deployment projects. So that could be within the range of technologies or costs that we support. It could be within the level of grant funding that we offer. It could be in terms of the scope of the different types of project collaborations that you're allowed to do. Again, the consultation spits out this question into a bit more detail so that you can provide us with more feedback on sort of specific areas. But it is really useful, again, to see kind of broadly what sorts of themes are coming up in terms of your areas of interest.
That's great. Shelley, could you scroll down a little bit, just a little bit more? See some of the other comments. So there's quite a few there for renewable energy generation, solar again. Being able to fuel switch through the IETF is great to change your process equipment to run on a new fuel, but have currently not being able to generate your, or you can have a solar farm, but you just can't cover the costs with the IETF fund. So quite a few people suggesting that would make an improvement to our outcomes if that part was also an eligible cost. Hydrogen in there as well. So presumably, yes, there's huge potential for hydrogen to decarbonise. So using hydrogen to generate your own electricity on site. Yep, that's not in scope at the moment. So if fuel switching to hydrogen to fuel your industrial process is in scope, but I don't think electricity generation is in scope from hydrogen, is it, Lily?
No, it wouldn't be. There is potentially one exception to that, but it's very specific. So that would be potentially if you have hydrogen as a byproduct on your sites. Potentially some chemical processes might produce hydrogen as a byproduct, or effectively a waste product. So we would look to support you to use that byproduct where it might help you to overall reduce the emissions of the energy on your site. But otherwise, electricity generation, unless it is from a waste product, isn't in scope.
That's what I thought. Great. So yeah, so maybe considering that one. Scrolling down a little bit more, Shelley. see some more of the comments. So again, dropping the TRL level, that's come a couple of times now to, I mean, really that's then getting into the territory of R&D, which the IETF doesn't currently cover. TRL 7, I would imagine, is the lowest TRL that an industrial site would want to permanently deploy something without knowing it was going to work. So it is really getting into the territory of R&D. Ground source heat pumps, yeah, they're in scope. If you're providing heat to the industrial process, so they're already in scope, but good to see you want that. Going down a little bit further. Consider including off-site enabling infrastructure. That's a good one. Currently, the IETF eligible costs are limited to the boundary of the industrial site. So I'm imagining that's possibly connecting to the grid, because that's come up quite a few times before. If people need to upgrade their electricity supply to be able to electrify their process as a fuel switching option, the connection to the grid or the upgrading the connection to the grid isn't currently in scope. So that's a good one. A little bit further, Shelley. And yeah, hydrogen again, solar again. There's definitely a lot of interest in the producing their own energy and fuels, low carbon fuels on site, to open up maybe some more projects. So that's great. Okay, so I think we'll close it there. There's lots more comments coming in. I can see that the 177 comments have been put under this one, so plenty for the IETF team to have a read through later on. But if we could now move back to the presentations, we'll wrap up today's event. Thank you very much. So for the final part of today's event, I'm just going to run through a couple of things. First of all, preparing for phase 3, which we all know is now coming next year. A little bit about the dissemination activities that I mentioned earlier on from phase 1 and 2 to help you to maybe get some ideas, and then closing remarks around what to expect after today's event. So first of all, preparing for phase 3. There's a few links there that will be, these slides will be sent to you, so you'll get these links to go and have a look at. But as Lily said, the autumn 2022 guidance from that competition window is still available. So if you're not aware of the IETF at all, this is the first time you've come across it, and you just want to get a general view of what was in scope in the previous window and sort of the kind of eligibility rules, then do go and have a look at that. The caveat on that is, as Lily said earlier, this is a consultation, so things might change slightly from what was in the autumn guidance, but at least it will give you a flavour of whether what you as an industrial site, whether you be in scope. We also created last year a how to apply tutorial. So this was a step-by-step video taking you through the application form and explaining exactly what each question was expecting, the type of information that DESNZ was hoping to see in those questions, just to also how to get access to the DESNZ portal to be able to submit your application. All of that was included in that tutorial. So that's well worth having a look through, again, if you've not applied to the IETF before. The frequently asked questions FAQ sheet, again, that's on the gov.uk website, and we'll cover a whole range of questions that have come up during phase 1 and phase 2 of the IETF programme, and also a link to all of the past competition winners, excluding obviously the autumn window, which is, as Lily said, currently still being finalised, who will be successful in that window. But the beauty of that is, if you are thinking of things you could do on your site, then that's worth going to see what other people have done. The winners cover all of the different sectors that are eligible to apply. So if you go and have a look at what someone else has done, that might give you some ideas of what you can do on your site. We also have a couple of resources that will be open the entire time, right up to March 2025, to provide you with some information. So first of all, we have our virtual technology marketplace. This is a platform that holds 5-minute videos from different technology suppliers. These are eligible technologies for the IETF. So if you're an industrial site and you're wondering what technology is out there that might be able to help you to reduce your energy demand or your carbon emissions, then you can get access to that platform at the link I've provided there. It also holds presentations, recordings of presentations from some of the funded projects as well. So again, I think there's about 10 or 15 on there now from different funded projects. The industrial sites themselves telling you how it was, the IETF process, as well as what the money has allowed them to do and the benefit that has brought to their site. And then finally, we have a dedicated IETF networking platform. So this is only for the IETF. So everybody on the platform is interested in the IETF in some way. And you'll find companies on there, either the industrial sites who can lead projects, or the technology suppliers who can help provide you with technologies, or as delivery partners and public sector as well, who could help maybe with your project, helping you to manage that project. Moving on then to the dissemination activities. So we have a whole bunch of things that we're hoping to produce this year to, again, raise awareness of what has already been achieved through the previous chunk of money that IETF had through phase 1 and 2, and to give you some ideas as well of what you could do with phase 3 money. So we already have a short podcast series that we produced last year. We're going to add to that with some more podcasts, each one focusing on a particular eligible sector from people that were funded in phase 1 and 2. So for instance, if one of the podcasts was food and drink industry, the people being interviewed on that podcast would be industrial sites from the food and drink industry, talking about what they've done. So if you yourself are from food and drink, then that's the podcast to come and have a listen to. We're also going to be visiting some of the phase 1 deployment projects. So going out to the industrial sites, making a video, interviewing the project lead at the industrial site, who will then show us around what it is that they have achieved with the IETF funding. Again, that might be a great way to find out what you could do on your site. We'll also be producing a digital brochure. So this will be written case studies, again, from the phase 1 and phase 2 projects, nice and glossy, to show you, again, some examples of what you could do. And then finally, in the autumn, we'll be hosting a live event, a technology showcase event, where, again, some of those phase 1 and phase 2 projects will be presenting to you to explain what they did and for you to get some ideas. And because it's a live event, you'll be able to go and talk to them afterwards and really get the detail of whether it would work on your site. So it's across all of these different dissemination activities, it's going to be a real cross-section of all of those eligible industrial sectors. So hopefully at least one of those things will be relevant to your industry and what you're hoping to do, and be of benefit to you. And then finally, just to wrap up today's event, if you could move on, Shelley. Oh, back one. That's it, lovely, thank you. So following this event, you will receive an email from Shelley. It's going to have a link to the formal consultation, the citizen space and the government consultation page, where you can find out more about actually see the consultation document and then provide your feedback through citizen space. You will also get a link, as I said earlier, to the recording of today's event and a link to the presentation slides too. So again, if you wanted to watch back, hear Lily and Sital and Rachel talking through the consultation information before you make your response on the government consultation page, then you'll be able to do that shortly. But really, our final message for you is please do contribute to the consultation. We really want to make sure that phase 3 next year is going to be right for you, and that you will then invest in decarbonising your site and getting to net zero, because that is really what we're trying to help you with. So please do take the time. The consultation closes, as was said earlier, on the 21st of July. So you don't have much time now. It's a couple of weeks to go. So please do make sure you make time to provide that feedback to DESNZ, because I know they're really keen to hear from you. But thank you all very much for all of your contributions through Mentimeter today, and the Q&A sessions as well. That's been really useful. And I hope you enjoyed the webinar, and we'll be back with you in the autumn for the response from government to the consultation. Thank you very much.
Innovate UK KTN Innovation Exchange provides ambitious solution providers with the opportunity to collaborate with key industry stakeholders, helping these major businesses discover the most innovative solutions to solve real-world problems.
IEX is a bit different to any other open innovation programme that you might see. What I love about it is if a challenge holder, as we define them, has a problem that they can't solve with their existing supply chain, we help reach parts of the supply chain that they wouldn't normally reach. I guess we have a black book that other organisations might not have at their fingertips.
First of all, it's the challenge owners, and they really like it because it allows them to get access to new ideas from different sectors of people they wouldn't normally meet. And the second party are the solution providers. And what they really struggle with is getting access, getting their foot through the door to the right people. And this takes them and introduces them to the right people with the technical skills that will assess what they're proposing.
It helps people find things they didn't know. It's those solutions that, gosh, never even thought that would work, or I didn't know that we could sell that to those. And that's the advantage for both sides.
The main benefit of Innovation Exchange is it breaks down barriers, it breaks down silos. Innovation and commercialisation is perceived as incredibly difficult. The IEX process facilitates the transition of technology through to commercialisation across sectors.
Large companies, small companies, everybody's busy, everybody is tied up. We try and reduce the amount of time that you need to put into to get what you require. So with the Innovation Exchange, we've proven it to be successful primarily in the energy sector. However, net zero gives us a great opportunity to step into other sectors. In addition, we have potential growth areas with local authorities. We can create an Innovation Exchange for the investor network. So there are a great number of areas where this can grow.
The way we've designed the IEX process makes it really easy for public sector organisations to implement, as it maps perfectly to the innovation partnership procurement routes.
The solutions that we've been able to extract through the process, we've reached out to, I think, some 40,000 businesses across the UK. We've really gained from the technologists in the KTN and the real subject matter experts that could really help us to distinguish from what might be good projects to what are excellent projects. We've really been able to get the cream of the crop through that to get to some really, really exciting, promising, highly innovative projects that I think without the KTN we wouldn't necessarily have been able to find.
Our technology began initially in the food industry, and then by the help of KTN we managed to move it into nuclear industry, but also now we are thinking of its use in other sectors.
And by joining basically such a program into the KTN, this helps a lot into bridging this gap and get into a better insights. What are the end users' challenges and what they're looking for? And it will help us, as you have seen, into interdisciplinary application, taking our knowledge, our expertise and applying it into other sectors.
Through relationships and also technical development, I don't think that we've experienced a better setup than the KTN IEX program.
If I'd sum it up in one thing, it'd be kind of this end-to-end support. So it wasn't that we had, a different point of contact for different parts of it and things got lost along the way. No, we were engaging with the same people from the start to finish. So there was this kind of consistency in what we were wanting to do, and there was some ownership of it from the KTN side, which we really valued.
We've got quite a big Innovate UK project now through our networks with the KTN because of getting involved in Innovation Exchange. So I highly recommend it.
Connecting people to make positive change, and that's what Innovation Exchange allows.